After living in Seoul for 3 years, I thought I had Asia figured out. I spoke conversational Korean, navigated the subway like a local, understood the social hierarchies, and felt confident that I could handle any East Asian culture. Then I moved to Tokyo, and within my first week, Japan completely shattered every assumption I had about what it means to live in Asia. If you've ever assumed that neighboring countries must be similar, especially countries that share so much history and cultural exchange, this story will blow your mind. Because what I discovered isn't just that Korea and Japan are different. It's that they represent fundamentally opposite approaches to human interaction, work, community, and even the basic question of how we should exist together as people. I'm about to share the 5 most shocking differences that completely transformed how I understand not just Asia, but human culture itself. By the end of this video, you'll never look at cultural assumptions the same way again. Let's start with shock number 5, the one that hit me before I even left the airport. Shock number 5, the silence revolution. Korean subway cars buzz with conversation, phone calls, music, and a constant hum of social interaction. Japanese trains operate in what I can only describe as sacred silence. Meet Michael Chun, a software engineer who made the same Seoul to Tokyo transition I did. Michael's first morning commute in Tokyo left him questioning his sanity. He waited for the familiar sounds of Korean subway life. Friends chatting about weekend plans, businessmen conducting phone meetings, students laughing over social media videos. Instead, Michael found himself in what felt like a moving library. 300 people sharing a confined space in complete, comfortable silence. No phone conversations. No music playing from speakers. Even whispered conversations felt inappropriately loud. The 2025 Cultural Communication Studies from Tokyo University reveal something fascinating. Silence in Japanese culture isn't empty space waiting to be filled with words. It's active communication, emotional regulation, and respect for shared space all rolled into one sophisticated social system. Michael described the psychological adjustment as profound. In Seoul, silence meant awkwardness, discomfort, or social rejection. In Tokyo, silence became companionable, peaceful, and surprisingly connecting. He found himself more aware of his surroundings, more present in his own thoughts, less anxious about filling every moment with noise. Research shows that Japan values silence, while Korea often generates loudness, and this goes far beyond superficial preferences. It represents completely different philosophies about how humans should inhabit shared space and relate to each other's internal experiences. 3 months later, Michael told me that returning to Seoul felt overwhelming and chaotic. The constant noise that once felt vibrant and alive now felt aggressive and inconsiderate. Tokyo had taught him that silence could be more communicative than conversation. But the silence was just preparing me for an even bigger workplace shock that challenged everything I thought I knew about East Asian work culture. Shock number 4, the work-life paradox. Everything you've heard about brutal East Asian work culture, Korea lives up to the stereotype. Japan completely defied it in ways that made American work-life balance look primitive. Sarah Kim worked for a Seoul marketing agency for 2 years before joining an international firm in Tokyo. In Seoul, Sarah regularly pulled 70-hour weeks, attended mandatory after-work drinking sessions until midnight, and used vacation days for rest because she was too exhausted for actual travel. Her Seoul colleagues wore their exhaustion like badges of honor. Leaving the office before your boss was social suicide. Taking sick days required guilt-inducing explanations. Work-life balance was considered a Western luxury that serious professionals couldn't afford. Then Sarah moved to Tokyo. Her Japanese contract explicitly limited work to 40 hours weekly. Overtime required written justification and additional compensation. Her manager encouraged her to use all 20 vacation days annually and followed up to ensure she was actually taking time off. When Sarah tried to stay late to finish projects, her supervisor politely but firmly told her to go home and complete work during business hours. The 2023 expat work satisfaction studies show something remarkable. Foreign workers in Japan report significantly better work-life balance than those in Korea, despite Japan's reputation for overwork culture. The brutal Japanese work culture applies primarily to traditional Japanese companies and career tracks, while international workers often experience more humane conditions. Sarah describes the psychological shift as life-changing. Seoul work culture made her feel valuable only when she was suffering, productive only when she was exhausted, dedicated only when she sacrificed personal relationships for professional advancement. Tokyo work culture taught her that rested employees make better decisions, that creativity requires mental space, that sustainable productivity comes from treating humans like humans rather than productivity machines. Her evenings transformed from collapse and recovery to exploration and relationships. Her weekends shifted from catching up on sleep to discovering temples, learning photography, and having conversations that weren't about work stress. Smart professionals are using the Japan model to negotiate better conditions anywhere, demonstrating that sustainable productivity and humane treatment actually improve business outcomes rather than hindering them. Work-life balance shocked me completely, but the social interaction rules literally broke my understanding of how humans communicate. But wait, before we continue, please subscribe and like to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. With that said, let's continue. Shock number 3, the social interaction matrix. Korean social interaction is direct, confrontational when necessary, and values immediate resolution of conflicts. Japanese social interaction operates on such sophisticated levels of indirection that I felt like I was learning an entirely new form of human communication. David Martinez experienced this difference during a simple restaurant complaint. In Seoul, when his food order was wrong, David pointed out the mistake directly to the server, who apologized immediately, fixed the problem efficiently, and everyone moved on with their lives within 3 minutes. In Tokyo, when David tried the same direct approach, the entire restaurant atmosphere shifted. His server looked mortified, other customers glanced over with concern, and David realized he had committed some terrible social violation without understanding what or why. Later, David watched a Japanese customer handle a similar situation. Instead of pointing out the mistake directly, the customer caught the server's attention with subtle gestures, spoke quietly, expressed gratitude for the server's hard work, mentioned almost casually that perhaps there had been a small misunderstanding about the order, and allowed the server to discover and correct the mistake while maintaining dignity for everyone involved. The 2024 Conflict Resolution Cultural Analysis reveals something profound. Korean culture values directness and immediate problem solving, while Japanese culture prioritizes harmony preservation and face-saving for all parties involved. Neither approach is superior, but they represent fundamentally different values about human dignity and social cooperation. David described learning Japanese indirect communication as developing a new sense, like discovering he had been colorblind his entire life and suddenly seeing a spectrum he never knew existed. Korean directness, which had felt honest and efficient, began to seem sometimes cruel and unnecessarily harsh. Japanese indirection, which initially felt confusing and inefficient, revealed itself as sophisticated emotional intelligence that allowed people to resolve conflicts while preserving everyone's psychological safety and social standing. The visual difference is striking. Seoul conversations can look like passionate debates even when people agree with each other. Tokyo conversations often look like gentle agreements even when people fundamentally disagree. Both cultures accomplish communication, but through completely opposite strategies. Learning to navigate both systems taught David that there's no universal right way to communicate, only different approaches that work within different cultural frameworks that prioritize different human values. Social rules were mind-bending, but the community belonging difference completely floored me and changed how I think about individual success. Shock number 2. The individual versus group mindbender. Korea taught me to compete with everyone around me. Japan taught me that my success was inseparable from my community's well-being, and this shift changed everything about how I approach daily life. Lisa Thompson joined gyms in both Seoul and Tokyo, and the cultural differences revealed something profound about how societies balance individual achievement with collective harmony. Seoul's gym culture was intensely competitive. Lisa watched people work out like they were auditioning for athletic scholarships, constantly comparing their progress to others, celebrating personal records while subtly undermining competitors, and treating fitness as individual warfare against weakness. The atmosphere was motivating but isolating. Everyone pushed themselves harder, but nobody helped anyone else improve. Personal achievement was the only metric that mattered, and other people's success felt like threats to your own progress. Tokyo's gym culture operated on completely different principles. Lisa observed people working out with focus and dedication, but also with constant awareness of how their actions affected others. Experienced lifters quietly helped beginners with proper form. People shared equipment naturally and waited patiently for their turns. Personal improvement happened within a framework of collective support. Cross-cultural psychology studies reveal something fascinating about this difference. Korea scores 82% on individualism measures compared to Japan's 58%, reflecting fundamentally different philosophies about the relationship between personal success and community well-being. Lisa described the psychological impact as revolutionary. Seoul's competitive individualism made her stronger physically but lonelier emotionally. She achieved personal goals but felt disconnected from people around her, like she was winning a game nobody else was playing. Tokyo's collective approach made her feel supported, included, and motivated by other people's success rather than threatened by it. Her personal improvement became part of a community's growth rather than individual competition against everyone else. The gym became a metaphor for entire social systems. Korean culture pushes individuals to excel through competition and personal responsibility, while Japanese culture creates conditions where individual success happens naturally through community support and collective progress. Both approaches produce results, but they create completely different experiences of what it feels like to be human in society. Lisa learned that success could feel isolating or connecting depending on the cultural framework that surrounds individual achievement. Smart travelers learn to adapt their personal achievement strategies to match cultural contexts, competing harder in individualistic societies while contributing more to collective success in group-oriented cultures. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for shock number one, the difference that changed how I understand human emotional intelligence. Shock number one, the emotional expression revolution. Koreans express emotions immediately, directly, and completely. Japanese emotional sophistication operates on levels so subtle and complex that it took me months to recognize I was witnessing one of humanity's most advanced forms of emotional intelligence. I spent countless evenings with the Nakamura family during my first year in Tokyo, initially thinking they were emotionally distant compared to my Korean friends who shared everything openly. Korean friends would tell me immediately if they were angry, excited, disappointed, or confused. Emotional transparency was considered honesty and intimacy. The Nakamura family communicated emotions through micro-expressions, subtle voice tone shifts, carefully chosen silence, and indirect references that required deep cultural knowledge to decode. Initially, this seemed repressed and emotionally unhealthy. Then I started understanding what I was actually witnessing. Mrs. Nakamura expressed concern for her teenage daughter's exam stress, not through direct questions or advice, but by preparing the daughter's favorite foods, maintaining slightly quieter household routines, and leaving encouraging notes in places where the daughter would discover them naturally. The daughter received emotional support without feeling pressured to discuss her anxiety explicitly. When Mr. Nakamura disagreed with a family decision, he didn't argue or express opposition directly. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions that guided the family toward considering alternative perspectives, allowing everyone to reach better conclusions without anyone losing face or feeling criticized. The 2025 Emotional Intelligence Cultural Studies reveal something remarkable about this difference. Japanese emotional expression prioritizes emotional regulation and harmony preservation, while Korean culture values immediate emotional honesty and direct problem solving. Both approaches accomplish emotional communication, but they optimize for different outcomes. Korean directness creates immediate clarity and rapid conflict resolution. Japanese subtlety creates long-term harmony and preserves everyone's psychological safety during emotional interactions. Learning to recognize Japanese emotional communication felt like developing superhuman emotional intelligence. I became more aware of micro-expressions, more sensitive to emotional atmospheres, more skilled at supporting people without intruding on their privacy. Korean emotional directness, which had felt healthy and honest, sometimes began to seem emotionally clumsy and unnecessarily harsh. Japanese emotional subtlety, which had felt distant and repressed, revealed itself as sophisticated consideration for other people's emotional needs and social dignity. The transformation was profound. I learned that emotional intelligence isn't just about expressing feelings clearly, but about choosing expression methods that accomplish emotional connection while preserving everyone's psychological well-being. The hidden truth revealed. These aren't just cute cultural differences or travel curiosities. These are fundamentally different philosophies about how humans should exist together, what individual success means, how communities should function, and what constitutes emotional maturity. Anthropological studies on East Asian cultural divergence show that despite sharing Confucian influences and centuries of cultural exchange, Korea and Japan developed almost opposite approaches to core human questions about social cooperation, individual achievement, and emotional expression. Neither approach is superior. They're different solutions to universal human challenges about balancing individual needs with collective harmony, immediate gratification with long-term stability, emotional honesty with social cohesion. Living in both cultures taught me that human adaptability is far greater than I ever imagined, that social norms I considered natural were actually learned cultural preferences, and that there are dozens of successful ways to organize human society. The personal transformation, living in both countries, didn't just teach me about Korea and Japan, it fundamentally changed who I am as a person. I learned to code switch between cultural contexts, adapting my communication style, work approach, and social behavior to match different cultural expectations. From Korea, I retained appreciation for directness, individual initiative, and immediate problem solving. From Japan, I gained skills in subtle communication, collective thinking, and long-term harmony preservation. This cultural fluency became a superpower for global citizenship. The ability to connect authentically with people from different cultural backgrounds by understanding and respecting their social norms rather than imposing my own cultural assumptions. So here's the question that's been haunting me for months, the same question that might be keeping you awake after watching this video. Which cultural approach resonates more deeply with your personality? Korean directness, individual competition, and immediate emotional expression, or Japanese subtlety, collective harmony, and sophisticated emotional regulation? What shocked you most about these differences? And here's what I really want to know. Based on what you just learned, which country would you choose to live in? And what does that choice reveal about your own values and preferences? Because the truth is, these cultural differences aren't just about Korea and Japan. They're mirrors that reflect our own assumptions about how humans should treat each other, what success should feel like, and how we want to move through the world. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know which cultural approach appeals to you more, and whether you think it's possible to integrate the best aspects of both cultures in your own life. Your answer might just reveal something profound about who you are and what kind of world you want to help create.